Thank you all for coming, as Victoria said. Now I can promise you three things today. You're going to have some fun. You'll take home some interesting information from our speakers, and there will not be a written test. So I'm Gary Franklin. I've been privileged to serve as the board president for the past 2 years for the Economic Development Council of San Juan County, or the EDC. The EDC's mission is to strengthen and diversify our local economy, basically by making connections. Okay? We link organizations with information and resources. Now, to illustrate this, everyone's been given a domino piece. And the only real use this domino piece has is to link or connect to another piece with matching dots. So here's the fun part. Please take your domino piece, put it on the table, and see how many links or connections you can make with the people. Sort of. Oh, very nice. Very nice. Now, can you see how some of the connections change the game and take it off into a different direction? You see that happening there? This is what our EDC does well. With Executive Director Victoria Compton and our intrepid staff of Robin and Tori, we spend countless hours making connections, linking organizations and entrepreneurs with information through classes, with money through funders and grants and partners, and with resources like mentors. The EDC is all about improving your knowledge of the business game and your skills in that game so you can play it successfully and have some fun doing it. The connections that they facilitate can shape the economy. Now, a wise woman once said, "You'll be the same tomorrow as you are today, except for the books you read, the places you go, or the people you meet." So I encourage you all to keep this with you as a reminder. Meet someone new each day. Make that new connection. Whether it's by sharing a smile, holding a door open, or calling the EDC. That connection might change your game and shape your economy. So please welcome Victoria Compton now.
Okay, how's this? It's exactly, we can hear you. Thanks, Amy. Okay, how's this?
Better.
It's the same. Better? Yeah.
Just pretend.
Okay, thank you to our sponsors. I forgot that right at the beginning. We've got some amazing sponsors that make all of this happen. Locally, we've got San Juan County, that's a major supporter of the EDC, the town of Friday Harbor, the ports of Friday Harbor, Orcas, and Lopez, Islanders Bank, Heritage Bank, Island Market. All of these people make it possible for us to offer the services that we do to small businesses, so thank you. So I'll just quickly run through our initiatives that we have for 2015. As Gary talked about, we help small island businesses, and we've done so since 2001. This year we did a business pulse survey, and I'll present the data from that in a couple shakes. We serve an average of 34 businesses a month, and that's people coming to us or us working intensively with them over the phone or really in any way that we possibly can. We do dozens of referrals every month where we're sending businesses to the Department of Revenue, not in a bad way, the Department of Revenue and other agencies, the Secretary of State, or whoever they need to help them get their businesses stronger. We do policy work and networking, all to help build the economy of San Juan County. And we've got an initiative for 2015 called Launch San Juan Islands, which is a business plan competition. And I will tell you about that in a couple minutes as well. So as I mentioned, workshops, that's one of the easiest and best ways that we reach a lot of businesses at the same time. The first half of 2015, we did 10 workshops, including an extremely popular women's business boot camp. That's it right there. And an inventors workshop where we had inventors coming out of the woods of San Juan County and presenting their highly credible inventions to a panel of inventor instructors. The business plan competition is going to be this fall. It's called Launch San Juan Islands. That's the logo. And Mark, can I tap into you for 30 seconds just to do a quick overview of that? Because that's an interesting project that we need to have 2 sentences on.
Sure.
And this is Mark Madison, our Board Vice President.
Thank you. Economic Development Councils in a number of counties around the state regularly run business plan competitions. And they do this in order to not just to get new businesses started, but integrate the process of helping people, new entrepreneurs, understand how to plan a business, how to plan their financials, how to get funding, how to put together a marketing plan. So what we'll be doing is our first pilot competition. There's going to be prize money that comes with winning the competition that you can use to help start a business here in San Juan County. We're going to recruit this summer a panel of judges from among the local business community to help us judge the business plans that come in.
And come and see it. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say, come and see us after the event today to tell us if you want to be one of the judges, because that's absolutely great.
And our goal is to kick this off just after the summer season, after Labor Day, after things get a little bit less busy and people have time to really focus on putting together a business plan. And it'll be integrated in with our workshop and class schedule for the fall. So stay tuned for that and send us your business plans.
Okay. Thanks for letting me do a surprise attack. We also worked this year on a branding initiative for San Juan County. Rick Hughes in particular was very interested in helping small manufacturers and foresters and fishers get a way to brand themselves as San Juan Islands made. So we put together a logo for that and a website, and the website will be live in about 2 days. So that's coming up, and just look for the press releases on that. So a quick little couple minutes on the business pulse survey that we did. We had 223 respondents, which represents about 11% of active reporting businesses in San Juan County. Active reporting means they're actually reporting income every year. It's a stratified sampling of all the industries in San Juan County. Stratified means we looked at the industries and ensured that there were enough representatives from all of the industries to adequately show a good picture of what the business or activity is in San Juan County. And there's a margin of error of about plus or minus 5%. So I'm not sure how easily you can see this, but the respondents on this are pretty close to what we see from the Department of Revenue analyses on what people's business percentage is by industry. So our big industries: construction, accommodations and food services, which is mostly our tourism industry, which also drives other industries, professional services. How long has your company been in operations? Most businesses in San Juan County are older than 5 years, which is great. Before the economic collapse, that was a bit lower, at least in terms of talking to people, what I found. The economic disaster basically flushed out anybody who wasn't a super strong business. So the ones that have weathered that are all still in business. How many employees do companies in San Juan County have? Half of local businesses have fewer than 3 employees. A big percentage is just owner-operator businesses. And I think we can see that when we talk to the various businesses in San Juan County. Gross revenues: 66% of businesses in San Juan County gross less than $500K. So they're small businesses, both income-wise and in terms of how many employees they have. And in the markets that they operate, most of it's local. So that's interesting. And one of the goals of the EDC this past year in San Juan County has been to increase exporting, and that's partly the work on that branding initiative will help foment some exporting activity. And rating the overall business climate in San Juan County, 60% of business owners saw the climate here as good or better. So that was good to hear. I did a word cloud to really take their essay questions and boil it down to some stuff that would bubble up to the top. These were the critical, difficult factor or difficult factors in growing business in San Juan County. The things that came up to the top are things I think we can anecdotally assume, but some of them were maybe not surprising to me, but good calls to action for me. For example, businesses wanted more training, and so that's a good call to action to me to set up more workshops. Ferries is an obvious one. About half of those were about the reservation system, which apparently wasn't working too well for some of the businesses that we talked to. Broadband, we know, signage, seasonality, all stuff that we could have, some of which we could have assumed. And what did businesses think were the greatest strengths for business in San Juan County? The community was number one. Almost every single respondent said the community. Now, I'm going to quickly throw in this because this is our pie. This is our economic pie for San Juan County by industry. NAICS is North American Industry Classification System. So basically, I took the industries, and this is gross business income for last year. And it looks pretty much like the pie usually does. The pie got bigger this past year, though, so that was great. And construction is one of our major industries. Retail is a major industry. Accommodations and dining also. And that's it for me. I want to pass this over to Anneliese, who's right over there. And she is from the Washington State Labor Market and Performance Bureau, Labor Market Performance Analyst for Washington State.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anneliese.
All right. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. I'll be talking a little bit about the San Juan County economy, in particular with a focus on the labor market. I am from the Employment Security Department in Washington State. We have three major functions. One that we're most well-known for, I guess. The largest function is unemployment insurance. We also are involved with getting people and jobs connected through the WorkSource system. And then I'm from the smallest division, which is basically the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Washington State office. So we're the ones who look at the unemployment rate, what is going on with different industries and so forth.
Anneliese,
Yes.
I just got so excited about pushing the slide button that I think we should do lunch first. Is that okay with you?
Yes. So I will leave you all in suspense.
So I think what we should do to make it a little bit easier is just go like the first back tables, shuffle through and then come around, and then next and next and next. And in the meantime, we can all network and gather together and have a community moment. Thanks. Anneliese, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, so you now know who ESD is. The role that the regional labor economist plays is basically to be here for the communities throughout Washington State. So the role that I play is actually to be able to get labor market information, get relevant and timely information out to businesses, to economic and workforce development, education, you name it. Anybody who uses labor market information. So I've got a brief presentation today. I'll be going over basically a couple of our major reports, unemployment and labor force. I'll move on to an overview of industry employment, and then touch upon a little bit of employment projections that we've generated. First, I do have to always give a little bit of definitions before I move forward, just so we know what the data are that we're working with. When we're talking about unemployment rates and the labor force, we're talking about people at the location where they live. So, especially relevant when we're talking about areas where there is a lot of commuting, really important to keep in mind the difference between the labor force and then on the flip side, the payroll employment. So overall, just a brief overview. The unemployment rate in Washington State as of April 2015 was 5.0%. So we've been continually seeing that unemployment rate going down. San Juan County, the unemployment rate was 4.5%. Civilian labor force is 7,410, give or take, in San Juan County. The number of unemployed were about 330. And that would be making up that 4.5% unemployment rate. Now, I put on here the number of unemployment insurance claims because I think there's a lot of myths around the around how we count the unemployed. Unemployment, certainly people who are claiming unemployment insurance are a subset of the unemployed. And here you can see about 90, we had 92 active unemployment insurance claims out of 330. Usually it's about 1/3 of the unemployed. And I think it's important to make that distinction just because certainly they are a subset. I say they're a subset because yes, they are actively seeking employment because we require them to sign on the dotted line that says they're looking for employment. So, but not one and the same. This is the number of active job seekers who would be the unemployed. You can see right here for the purposes of the presentation moving forward, blue lines are always going to represent Washington State, and orange is going to be the color I designate for San Juan County. So here you can see what the unemployment rate looks like when you compare the two. Now, first of all, you can see the recession. Oh, you can't see the recession shading. I have some, but you don't need it. You see exactly where the unemployment rate spiked right when the recession occurred. Actually, the recession was over in 2009. But the unemployment rate kept climbing until 2010. The other thing that you're really going to be able to see on this graph is just how seasonal employment is in San Juan County compared to Washington State as a whole. We have very clear peaks and troughs, very predictable based on the seasonality. But you can see overall, when you account for that seasonality, Washington State as well as San Juan County, we're seeing the unemployment rate slowly but pretty consistently going down. Just another way of looking at it, because especially in an economy like San Juan County, it is important to take some of that seasonality out. And what we can see is that the unemployment rate, so 2012 is the green, 2013 is the yellow, 2014 is blue, and 2015 is the orange. So what you can see is that when we compare year over year, the unemployment rate, we still see that very predictable seasonal pattern, but we're consistently seeing that unemployment rate coming down. I think it's really important anytime we have statistics just to recognize that we are looking at different geographies. When we see that 5.0% unemployment rate statewide, we've got a myriad of different stories, and I think it's really important to recognize just how distinct the patterns are depending on where you're located. So the lowest unemployment rate this month, or in April 2015, was in King County, 3.3% unemployment rate. And at the other end, we have, the winner of the highest unemployment rate this month would have to be Ferry County at 9.7%. We've been consistently seeing very high unemployment rates still in the northeast and southwest corners of the state. So the way in which we experience the economy is always very local. And I think this just kind of serves to show what that looks like statewide. Switching the story a little bit, I'm going to be looking at industry employment. And when we're talking about industry employment, we're talking about jobs, not people. People can have more than one job. We're talking about jobs at the location of employment. First, just a couple pie charts to show what industry employment looks like. And I think it follows pretty closely with the graphs that Victoria showed earlier. Just looking at employment, and this is not accounting for sole proprietors, but this would be employers. What we see, not a huge surprise, leisure and hospitality, which is going to be restaurants and hotels for the most part, so recreational activities, makes up about 27% of all jobs in San Juan County on an annual average in 2013. It's followed by trade, transportation, and utilities, which includes retail and wholesale trade. Government after that, which is going to include K through 12 education. Construction at 11%, healthcare at 7%, and so forth. So very concentrated in leisure and hospitality and trade. And I think, especially when we see how seasonality really affects San Juan County, I thought it would make more sense actually to break this into two different pie charts. So comparing January of 2013 with August of 2013. And what we see here is that first of all, you have an increase of close to 2,000 jobs which is about a 43% increase in employment if you're comparing winter and summer. So a huge shift in the economy. Just notice the leisure and hospitality in particular goes from 20% of the total employment base to 36% during that seasonal difference. And that represents about 1,400 jobs, a 159% increase. So huge, huge seasonality when we're talking about San Juan County. Just another snapshot. When we're looking over the month, so just the job change from March to April, Washington State as a whole gained 26,100 jobs. San Juan County is estimated to gain 70. Again, the month to month is going to not really iron out what's going on seasonally. So I think it's more relevant to look at that year-over-year measure, where Washington State gained about 111,000 jobs, and San Juan County added about 110 over the course of the year. That's a 2.2% increase year over year compared to Washington State as a whole, which gained 3.6%. So what this looks like, very similar graph to what we saw with the unemployment rate. When we're looking at the actual employment in San Juan County, very, very seasonal. Kind of hard to read, so I did a 12-month moving average just to be able to iron out a little bit of what that looks like. And so what we can see here is that we've got modestly improving employment up to about 2008 when we dove into the recession. And from there, our recovery, the recovery in San Juan County has been modest. A fairly significant decline, and for the most part, a little bit of variation, but not a whole lot of upward lift in terms of the number of jobs. And I think, Victoria, when you mentioned the number of businesses that were 5 years or older, I think that really gets reflected in this slide, that we do have, there hasn't been a whole lot of new jobs being generated. Just taking a similar look to what I did with the unemployment rate, layering the different years. Overall, what we can see is that it's been pretty consistent. We tend to see the usual seasonal patterns. Not a whole lot of divergence, though, not a tremendous amount of growth, but then again, not a whole lot of decline either. Overall, again, 2.2% growth year over year when we're measuring April with last year, April. Another way of looking at this, when we look at average employment comparing 2014 and, let's see, in 2008 we lost 9.4% of all jobs. When we compare over the year, the average employment of 2014 and 2013, we were up 1.2%, so a gain of, on average, about 90 jobs. So it's been, we've seen a little bit of upward lift, but not a whole lot. It's been pretty steady. Dividing that out by different industries, what we see is that for the most part, we're seeing growth month to month, as well as year over year. The only industries that I'm not seeing growth in are construction, down 20 jobs, and professional business services down 10. But this is also the time of year when we start to see leisure and hospitality is also down at this point, April compared to April of last year, down 50 jobs. I guess I could ask that question. You know, is there any...
One thing that we've noted is that when the recession hit, a lot of people stopped hiring kind of the part-time workers around the edges and took on a lot of the responsibilities themselves. And only this year, people are feeling comfortable enough to rehire those kind of peripheral jobs.
One thing I also noticed when looking at leisure and hospitality over the summer is that it tended to pick up a bit higher over the summer months. So there may be a phenomenon taking place where we're seeing higher peaks and a bit, I guess, more concentration focused on the summer season. When we're looking, just the way to read this graph, the blue bars represent the recession. So April 2008 to April 2010 to get rid of seasonality. And then the orange bars represent April 2010 compared to April 2015. A couple really stand out. First of all, construction, the losses in construction. And remember, construction only made up about, I believe, 11% of the number of jobs. Not a huge industry in San Juan County. However, pretty close to the number of jobs lost in leisure and hospitality. A very large impact. We saw this locally as well as statewide, even at a national level. Construction was hit extremely hard, with about 1 in every 3 jobs in construction being lost in that 2-year period. Construction continues to decline. In many areas, we are beginning to see construction picking up. However, in San Juan County, we're still seeing losses in that particular sector. Leisure and hospitality, another sector that saw very deep losses, but we're also seeing a lot of gains over the last few years coming back. A lot of those jobs are coming back. A couple of others that I think are worth taking a look at, education and health services. You notice this is private education, this is health services as well. You notice there wasn't actually a decline. If I was to say that there was a recession-proof industry, and I'm not going to say there was a recession-proof industry, but if I was, I'd say that a lot of that's going to be in education and health services, largely because the demand is derived from people still living in the area. So unless people are leaving in droves, there's a base level of services that's going to be needed. So this is one industry that, while it didn't see growth during the recessionary period, it didn't decline either. We're continuing to see that growth following population growth. Government tends to be counter-cyclical. We saw a little bit of some minor declines in government during the recession. We continue to actually, most of the losses in in government actually took place after the recession was declared over. And this is largely because a lot of funding comes in during times of need. And the recession was long enough that when we would have started to see some of the revenues picking up, they weren't yet. And so a lot of budgets got slashed and there was a bit of a delay. Government tends to have a little bit of a delayed response compared to the rest of the economy in that respect. But overall, we're beginning to see those orange bars show up on the right side of the line. So we're starting to see some growth, particularly in some of the larger industries in San Juan County. And I could talk a whole lot more, but I'm going to pass the mic over to Hart. Please, if you have any questions, this is my contact information, and I would encourage you to give me a call or email me.
Hart Hodges, come on down. So this is Hart Hodges from Western Washington University.
Victoria, thanks for having me. James, you cue these things up. I'll have to.
Just go. No, this is next slide. 6, 7. There you go.
All right. My job was to try to set the stage for a discussion, pulling back a little bit. So if you've got a moment, if there's a question, a burning question that is data specific to what you just heard, jot it down. Because I'm going to go in 3 different directions, 2 different tangents, and then we're going to have, I think, half an hour of Q&A is what we were trying to do. Victoria asked me to present regional trends that might be of interest, or should be of interest to the EDC here. Anneliese already stole all the data. I'll let you know that data is hard to come by for a county the size of San Juan, so bear with me. Yes, we can spend some time talking about a consensus U.S. forecast, or even easily get into the Washington State forecast. And what I've simply said is, you've been hearing about a 2.5% GDP growth forecast for years, and during each year it keeps getting revised downward. Everybody starting the year says it's 2.5%, and then sometime in the spring, oh, it's only going to be 2%. And I think that 2.5 is finally happening. The labor market is getting stronger, housing markets, in some big picture, getting better, et cetera, et cetera.
I thought that would be a bit boring. So I wanted to go in a few other directions. Why is economic activity happening where it is? And I've got a couple of slides on this in a moment. Harder to do for San Juan County, but bear with me. I don't know if you're familiar with the book by Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat. Right? So puts forth the idea that with technology and telecommuting and so on, you should be able to live anywhere, and it doesn't have to be where you work. You can work remotely and so on. So if that's true, why has all of the economic activity and much of the population growth for the last 5, 6, 7 years been happening in large metro areas and not places that have the quality of life that San Juan County has?
It's not true.
Technology. No, technology should allow, should allow something. So keep that one in mind. Jobs. Okay, it still fits though. I'm going to mention a couple things on taxable retail sales, and I want to highlight the role of online purchases and what that might mean for sitting next to the town of Cloud Harbor, what that might mean for an EDC or some of the municipalities here. A couple of comments on technology and the labor market. See, I'm dancing around some of Anneliese's work. And then population, which brings me full circle back to uneven growth. So this graph, I wanted to go back much farther, and there's a time series data that are available for all the metropolitan statistical areas in the state that make it easier to show what's happening over time, because I've got monthly data. That particular series is not available for San Juan County, so this is where I'm saying bear with me. I've got Seattle, Washington, and Bellingham. Bellingham is synonymous with Whatcom County. The whole point of this is that employment growth was fairly similar in Bellingham and King County in the state. It didn't really matter going into and then right as the recession was really starting. But the recovery has been dramatically different. So I've got, for those of you in the back, the blue line is Seattle, green line is Washington, and red is Bellingham. So Seattle got back to its pre-recession employment levels in mid-2013. Bellingham just got there. A two-year difference in terms of employment growth and the type of jobs matter. So when we're talking with folks in Whatcom County, one of the questions we'll ask is Bellingham more urban or more rural? Because it's been behaving. It's been behaving like a rural area. And the phenomenon, this is the same graph for Oregon. Top line is Portland. The dotted line, that you barely see in the back is the state. And then the bottom areas are more rural. So what I'm describing is happening all across the U.S. You've got any state with a major metro area, all of the growth for the last 7 years has been in that major metro area and almost no growth outside. And so all of the EDCs are wondering, what do we do? I think the overarching question that I have for you is there a structural change that you're witnessing, or is it just cyclical? So here's part of the reason I asked that. From 2000 to 2005, the Bellingham economy substantially outpaced the Seattle economy. You remember the recession of 2001 and 9/11 and all of that? It didn't hit the industries that were in the smaller communities like Bellingham. The dot-com bust, the big hit on travel, 2005 to 2010, we grew very similarly to King County. 2010 to present, much, much slower. One argument is that these are just natural cycles. We'll get back to something else very soon. But there's concern about the structural change. And that's partly what I want you to think about and what you're going to have to wrestle with as an EDC, right? Real similar graph to something that Anneliese was showing. I've got some of your major industries. It's hard to read in the back: construction, manufacturing, retail, professional and technical services, healthcare and social services, food and accommodation, government, and all other. The red bars are 2005, blue bars are 2013. So exactly what Anneliese was showing. You're seeing some some reductions in terms of the size of these sectors in construction, even a little bit in retail, growth in food and accommodations, and then some of the others like utilities and some of the small ones. What I want to add to this, we often talk about where do people work. Remember, where you get the money might be different. Now, in a number of counties on the mainland, it's much more striking. For example, you might have 10% of your workers in manufacturing, which you may get 18, 19, 20% of your overall income in manufacturing. The only ones that stood out here were food service and accommodations, where you have a quarter of the jobs, but less than 15% of your overall income is earned in that sector. And so remembering job counts, but also quality of job, or where wages are higher, that matters. So I want to spend a little bit more time the components of income, because this is where San Juan County really starts. And I'm not going to tell anybody anything new in this room, but it's where San Juan County starts to look very, very different. What percentage of the average person's income comes from wages or earned income? Those are the blue bars. And for those of you in the back, it's San Juan County, the 3 bars on the left, then Washington State, and then the United States. So usually 2/3 of your money comes from earned income. And the other third is a mix of property income. Think rental property, stocks, dividend and interest income, and then you have some coming from transfer payments. You can think Medicaid or all sorts of government programs. And San Juan County, it's about 1/3 of the income is earned income. The rest comes from property income. So very, very different looking economy in terms of how people get their money.
Is that property in the island, or is that property outside of the island too?
It's not, they said property, don't think just real estate. Think stocks, bonds, and real estate.
So I mean, if you owned an
Yeah,
apartment
anywhere.
complex in Los Angeles
Anywhere.
and you lived here.
Anywhere, yeah. So it's income that is declared here, but it can be earned elsewhere. And on the far left, even the earned income, there's a little fuzzy difference of almost 6% of the earned income is earned outside the county. People working outside the county, maybe a healthcare worker who has shift work someplace. So you can imagine that, and people bring that back as well. One thing didn't transfer over. That is a huge shift. In the early 70s, San Juan County looked just like Washington State and the rest of the U.S. And if I have that slide, it'll pop up in a moment. So the shift to having a possibly more retiree-based income picture. But in the 70s, San Juan County had an earned income-based economy. Now it's a property income-based economy. Switching to population. So if you look at over the last 40 years, 45 years, you've averaged about 3.5% population growth per year. But notice what's happened, and this is a theme I'm going to try to push a little bit. Notice what happened around 2000, 1999 to 2000. Something changed pretty significantly, and it predated the 2001 recession, and certainly predated the last recession. You've been running around 1% population growth annually for the last 10 years. 0 in a couple of years. For those of you in retail, that makes it harder, right? Where does the growth in retail sales come from? So that's something to keep an eye on. So different pictures. So the first set of bars, I've got a picture here of population growth by San Juan County, King County, Washington, and the United States. Just to get that image. So in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you had greater population growth, faster population growth than any of the other areas. 2000s, about the same. 2010 to present, significantly lower. And what strikes me, and this is actually similar in Whatcom County and Skagit County, you've got a fraction of, you've got slower population growth on a much smaller base. So if you think about how percentages are calculated. For Seattle, for King County to be running at 1.5 to 2% population growth on that base. And I can say, whereas Whatcom County, San Juan County, running at 0.2% population growth on our basis, that says something. And you get to wrestle with some of the whys. Victoria's already gone over the gross business income, and Anneliese has touched on some of that, so I'm going to skip that slide. So, jumping to taxable retail sales. All I'm trying to show with these two pictures, I've got the reddish line is, I tried to do orange as well, but it's not projecting the same. San Juan County, the blue line is Washington State. So the top graph is 1994 through 2014. Just trying to say, same pattern in terms of overall sales. Bottom right is the number of firms, and I was actually surprised. Much less volatility through the recession here than in the state as a whole. In other words, far fewer businesses saying I give up, and then less growth coming out. But the thing I want you to start picturing, here's the percentage of retail sales that's categorized as e-commerce. And it only goes from 0 to 2.5%. The red line is San Juan County mail order. And James McCaffrey is here with me from the Center for Economic and Business Research at Western. He's done more work in this area. So if you got a tough question, I want to hear it because he has to answer it. But one of the things that we were talking about when we looked at this graph is, so what to 2.5%? That's small. Except if this rate of growth continues, what are you going to say if 5% of your retail activity is mail order? That's going to matter in your budgets. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, don't get me wrong. It's just disruptive, it's change, needs to be considered. I also think that these data undercount what's actually going on because these are for the stores that are actually recording it properly. Lots of stores don't necessarily record it, so I would say it's undercounted.
In dollars, the gap between the blue line and the red line is $2.5 million. Last year.
So I'm back to my structural cyclical debate and trying to set the stage for some of the discussion we want to have. So an odd graph, 1975 to 2014. All right, the blue line is GDP. And the red line, this is for the United States, by the way, the red line is jobs. And all I did was try to make this I adjusted the scales on my graph, try to make those two lines fit each other as best I could. And usually the story you hear is coming out of the recession, GDP got back to pre-recession levels very quickly, and we were making the same amount of stuff with 5 million fewer workers, or whatever version of that you heard. What jumps out at me about this graph is a divergence. I mean, how closely labor follows output until 2000. And it's in early 2000 when you get that split. So again, same thing, predates the 2001 recession, predates 9/11. So before .com, before 9/11, something's happening in the labor market. And you've got a pretty good debate going on in academic circles amongst economists, some saying it's technology and globalization and a structural change. More on that in a moment. Some saying it's just weak demand, we need stimulus. And that's been a fun debate to talk about because which camp you fall into would make you have very different policy prescriptions. There's a third camp emerging that we have bad policies and it's driving income inequality. That's the other. So, I don't know if anybody reads The Economist magazine, but in the past few years, these are two cover photos. The top one, the title of that particular issue was Print Me a Stradivarius with a 3D printer. It played. The other one is a Formula One engine that was able to run. If you just daydream for a moment about what's happening with technology on the healthcare side, robotic surgery, gamma knives, and so on, transportation, transformational changes if you think about shifting to natural gas, but also electric, and so on and so forth. Retail, I got a question mark. meaning e-commerce, that's easy. But what else? When are you going to go to a restaurant and there won't be a wait person? You can already get on certain airlines and you tap on the seat back in front of you to order your drink, and it's not somebody coming up and down the aisle. Technology is just beginning to hit retail in ways that are visible to us. Education, it's bound to be disruptive. My colleagues don't like online education and some other things because it puts us at risk, but that's another story. But just think for a moment about what technology is doing to the job market. And it's quite disruptive. It's uncomfortable. This graph, think skill level on the horizontal axis, employability on the vertical. And what your parents always told you was stay in school, get more skill, you'll get a better job. And the red line sort of tells that out, right? That upward sloping line, more skill, more employable. And that's the 80s. The blue part is 1990 to 2005. So there's some range of skill where more skill, less employable. Make sense? Got a good story for it? Sure you do. How many paralegals does it take to do the work that 3 or 4 paralegals used to do? Think about it, forest products manufacturing. Think about what the shop looked like in the 80s. Think about what the shop looks like now. How many workers? And I'm not talking about offshoring. I'm talking about obliterating. Productivity increases, changing what's needed, who does what. So, on the left, it's the same sort of graph. I'm saying non-routine, high skill, very employable. On the far right, non-routine manual skills, non-routine executive assistant in a large firm. Don't have to be highly skilled in terms of your formal training, but the jobs are different day to day, right? It can't be automated, and somebody else's productivity isn't going to just take away the job. But in that middle, the downward sloping bars, 2007 to 2014, that's the hollowing out of the middle class. That pattern's happening. Okay, you're supposed to be thinking, what type of jobs do we have on San Juan Island? Lopez or Orcas, right? Because you've got a double whammy. If the jobs that you've been sort of trying to promote and cling to are those routine jobs, it's harder. Okay. Routine employment per capita. Part of what we're seeing is those routine jobs with each recession, the 91, 2001, 2008, they're not coming back. Each time. They used to come back. So this is part of the argument for the structural change, that we're not needing those workers nearly as much. So that's changes in the labor market that are at least visible on the employment and unemployment data. The returns to education, so the wage premium, if you will. So on the lines, it's college plus. So maybe some certificates and then masters or higher. Wage premiums are going up with the high skill, but that's the high skill non-routine. Now, bear with me for a moment. How do you put this together? Because I just want to help set up the discussion. We typically focus on a bit of economic data and then start talking about economic development. And I want to broaden that. And this is a very incomplete picture, but I mentioned technology. One of the tangents I'd love to go on right now, if you've read Thomas Piketty's book, Capital in the 21st Century, and a lot of concern about income inequality. Part of what I'm suggesting is that with technology, I've got one paralegal doing what 4 used to do. Okay, I'll share some of the extra earning, if you will, and the value with that paralegal, but there's more profit. Who captures the benefits of this capital? And I think that's, if you think of economies of scale, I think technology suggests income inequality continues to go up. for a while anyway. Technology is very disruptive. Another tangent is, if I'm a business owner and I'm worried about technological change, I don't want to make the same sort of investments in workers that I used to. Decades ago, during the recession, I kept you. I made the investment to keep you. I needed you when the recession was over. Now I might use the recession as an excuse, because your skill set might be shorter-lived, right? So a number of tangents like that about how disruptive technology is. Demographics, I probably should have put demographics, sociology. We don't talk about population growth enough. We don't talk about changes in sociological patterns. There's a fascinating article on income inequality that said income inequality would be measurably lower if people still married as they did in 1960. I get to be politically incorrect for a moment and say the stuffy white doctor or banker in 1960 was a male, and he married probably a stay-at-home wife. Now, women outnumber men in med school, law school, and you're getting like marrying like. It does amazing things to income and income inequality. We don't factor those things into our discussions enough about economic development. But so that when I'm saying demographics, I'm thinking, how do you weave that in? The final one that I was trying to put up here, the rate of change in technology, and the demographic discussion is probably a little bit different. I don't know, and I apologize, I don't know the demographic characteristics of San Juan County well enough. But in a lot of times, this conversation is increasing ethnic diversity. Cities are becoming, instead of predominantly white, now you have minority-majority cities, things are changing. Well, the institutions that we used to look at or look to help us sort through some of these issues, Rotary, Lions, Elks, where I grew up, churches from the Southeast, they have not been changing nearly as fast as technology. They're not changing nearly as fast as some of the demographic factors. I think that presents new types of problems, new challenges for community leaders. Think about the town where you grew up. If somebody walked up to you and said, name the top 5 community leaders, you probably could have done it. You might have named the mayor, head of the newspaper, head of some major business. Do it today. Right? It's changing, it's different. And that's, I'm going to look to Victoria. So you've got to think more creatively. When you're talking about economic development, I think you can't just look at economics and the economics and the labor market data. I think you've got to ask a variety of other questions. One more thing on the retail side that I think might matter for San Juan County. I know you can read this, so I'll accept questions. No, it's a terrible picture. The title, and I clipped it out of a magazine. It was an ad, but it says Americans are buying experiences. We were trying to get some data on millennials. We're wondering about delays in household formation. I mean, anecdotally, you can say as a country becomes more wealthy, the various phases of household formation and getting jobs get delayed. And we were going to try to quantify that. And you start wondering how many millennials have moved back home, so on. Where we're seeing things most right now is on the purchasing side. I didn't bother to bring it, but there's a slide that shows with the decline in the price of gasoline, it should have been a dividend in everybody's pocket. And that should have rippled through pretty quickly in terms of spending. It hasn't. Savings rates have gone up. It's fascinating. Americans are saving. It's odd. Never seen that before. Millennials are saying they're buying experiences. They're not buying as many things. So this was, the shape is millennials are born. Millennials enter the workforce. And millennials command over $1 trillion in spending. But they go to events. It's the experience. And I think that's something that is probably very important for a county or a community like San Juan. So hard questions for James or Anneliese. Easy questions, here's my email. I think you wanted to have sort of an open discussion. And so, Anneliese, if you want to go over, do you have a question for Anneliese?
For both, yeah, we had the screen up about the mail order sales, about 2.5%, they've gone up to that point. Are those mail order sales 100% of those that are paying sales tax? Or is there another quantum above that of the companies that are doing mail order and are not yet on board with paying sales tax?
James, it would be a mix.
No, this is just sales tax. These are the ones that are paying sales tax. So people that are ordering from eBay or from Hong Kong or from any of those other places that don't have a nexus in Washington State, and the state is busily changing that definition of what nexus is, which will have impacts on all the EDCs, because pretty much any business that's going to do business in Washington State is going to have to start dealing with B&O tax and sales tax.
Does everybody know that the reason James is mentioning, if a business has a nexus with Washington State, you've got destination-based sales tax, and then emerging is the requirement to pay B&O tax in communities where you're doing business. So I answered your question correctly.
There's some states that are still not, there's some companies that are still not paying through because they don't have the reciprocity set up yet. And so I'm wondering if we had any idea how big that number above that really is, or how much mail order is going on.
We don't. So we're not capturing mail order sales that are recorded as mail order sales but don't pay taxes, and we're not capturing the mail order sales that are, if someone has just logged in their business as a regular sale. So it's definitely too low.
To build on Duncan's question, the comment over here, this is the hard question.
Good.
When you made a comment that the gap is 2.5 million.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And that's the gap between,
Washington State average. So when you take the Washington State average percentage of mail order sales and that growth there, that's about, I'm trying to remember now, just under 2% annual growth, or over that whole slant there. When you take that
Washington
number,
State was like 1.6,
Yeah.
mostly 1.6, and San Juan was just over 2%.
so you're not saying that it's 2.5 million total.
last year, let me rephrase it this way more directly. Last year, the residents of San Juan, people receiving the parcels in San Juan County purchased $2.5 million more than their peers anywhere as a state.
Okay, well, so where I was trying to dimensionalize that somehow. If you take an average $30 package, you're somewhere between 80 and 85,000 packages.
Your math's correct.
I mean, that's an interesting.
Yeah, we've actually tried to get freight data from UPS and a few other shippers. They won't release it, which obviously, right? I mean, they're not going to release that. But this is very interesting, and it's a phenomenon. Whatcom County has this far worse. 2.5 times the population of Whatcom County receives mail in Whatcom County. Those are Canadians. And it's driving e-commerce. They have the highest rate of e-commerce in the state because of it. Just in the town of Sumas, there are 8 very thriving mailbox businesses.
Some of the busiest border crossing days are now foot passengers coming across the Sumas, walk across, pick up mail, walk back.
There's also a lot of revenue coming into counties that they may not otherwise capture because they're collecting the sales tax revenue on these parcels.
Yeah, it's a mixed sort of the conversation. You can say e-commerce is gutting our retail, but somebody can say, no, we're still collecting the sales tax, thanks very much. Yes, sir.
You might ask how much of this mail order is for stuff that you just can't get in the county. I think a lot of it is that.
I'm sure.
And you should break that down if you can.
From our standpoint, from a government collection standpoint, it's a lot better to have it shipped in via Amazon where the sales tax comes here than it is for us to drive to Burlington and purchase it there where the sales tax stays there.
Much, yes. Right, if somebody drives to Burlington, that's the point of say, oh, that's the destination, so that's what the taxes are assigned. And we get that.
I'm not sure which data point, but we talked earlier about the fact that in the metro area, we're seeing a lot more growth than in the rural area. And, you read about Silicon Valley, whatever, the young people have got, you go where they go, where the technology is. And there's just this crowd effect that drives.
There are definitely advantages in our jargon to agglomeration, knowledge building. I mean, if you said to me, Mark, go start a tech company, and you have to choose between Friday Harbor and Seattle, I'm going to go to Seattle. I've got people that I can steal ideas from very easily. If I'm a worker, we run into this problem in Bellingham. I can get a job at Logos, but if that job fails, what do I do? If I go to Seattle for a job and that job doesn't work out, there are 100 other companies. And so you start getting that critical mass that builds on itself. And then when you say that critical mass, but it's Dropbox, Amazon, Zillow, Microsoft, etc., there's a bunch of them, it starts to really build. Yes?
And you can see a lot more specialization in the urban economies. And just thinking about the King County in particular, which industries have been growing the fastest. Well, lately construction, but that has different routes. But a lot of the growth through this recovery has been in manufacturing, a lot of aerospace in particular, but professional business services in particular with computer and related services, as well as retail, which includes electronic retail. It's folded into the retail picture in King County. So there's a couple that should stand out, a couple employers that should stand out when you think about that. A lot of where we've been seeing that growth, that really explosive growth in King County is in a lot of high-tech employment.
So if you're building on your point, if you look at that recovery graph, that ton recovery, Seattle is outperforming the state, would that be pretty highly correlated or have a similar slope to the introduction of electricity? If you go back to another century, does the advent of broadband and high tech, are we creating urban islands? Because the build out of technology is easier there, or is that reaching too far?
It has to be focused historically on. I think we have a technology wave that has to be to focus in specific urban centers and then gradually move out from there.
On the wage data, and I don't have the graph, but if you can picture a timeline of per capita income, and I imagine it's the same for San Juan, but for Watco, in the 60s and 70s, recessions in 73, I think there were a lot of people in Whatcom County thinking to themselves, my fishing job will come back, my forestry job will come back, without much recognition of what was happening globally, the commodification of some of these products and jobs, and not thinking what was happening with environmental regulations. Meanwhile, Seattle had the same sort of dip, but it immediately started to go up. Boeing changed, and Microsoft started, and you saw something very similar to what we're seeing now, in terms of a separation, where the urban areas really distinguish themselves in terms of growth, in terms of earnings, and it never really closed. The benefits of that sort of growth finally rippled through, and you saw same growth for decades and similar patterns. So there's been times where the urban areas distinguish themselves and stay clearly different, and it seems to be happening again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so then the follow-on is there anything that a rural community can do to close the gap on that curve? So in those previous examples, were there communities that were able to get out of their channel, if you will?
The reason I mentioned Friedman's book, the prediction a decade ago was that why would I face the traffic and the headaches that are Seattle and not telecommute, not work remotely from Friday Harbor we're not seeing that yet. And so I mean, I think quality of life, as long as you've got access to healthcare, et cetera, right? You're supposed to be able to crack that nut. No one's doing it right now. James?
Well, Hart and I had a whole conversation about psychology of business owners on the float here. And I do wonder, and we were trying to figure out how we would look at this research-wise. And what we specifically were talking about is, why is it that jobs pay less in some communities, and then even though the percentage of small businesses may be the same between Bellingham and Seattle, why do small employers pay less? And in some communities, even the major employers will pay less because the small businesses are paying less. So what is it about the psychology of people? We're back to people now, right? Why do we behave that way? And we're trying to figure out.
I was arguing the demographic side again, because we broke apart, and Anneliese, you're going to have to help me. We looked at the population data by cohort and trying to figure out what age people were moving to Seattle and when did they start to leave. What age people were moving to Bellingham and when did they start to leave. And everybody's talking about Whatcom County's access to the islands and beauty, and we have this wonderful quality of life. Well, not for a 25-year-old.
It's age,
They leave. People come to Bellingham closer to 40. And I would bet it's possibly a little older here. And so that demographic people younger than me choosing to come.
I think we would have to have more incentives for that young techie group to want to come here.
And I don't know how you make Friday Harbor cool to that crowd.
Except for vacations, they come for 3 days.
Well, part of it's that when you have a lot of, when we're talking about this technology and the innovation, you really do need multiple players having that frequent contact with each other, and that's part of the reason why you end up having such concentrations. And once the technology gets a little bit older, that's when you really start to see it spread out to more areas and able to get more standardized. But I think when it's still that highly innovative stage, it really does tend to cluster in very tight. I mean, even to city blocks sometimes.
I don't think there's a silver bullet, but can you chip away at it? Can you have a few firms from Seattle send workers? Can Friday Harbor be a place where they don't just come for a couple of weeks, but there's a remote campus for some of these companies, and you're not going to get them full-time necessarily, but you get more of them for more months and begin to chip away at it? So there's a
So just to follow on from that, it would be helpful if somebody was gathering statistics on rates of telecommuting as an occupation, right? We're not likely here to attract the nexus of things that would cause high-tech businesses to headquarter here. However, we do have a broadband initiative with our electrical co-op, which is going to make it possible to telecommute from the islands pretty much for the first time unless you've lived right downtown in Friday Harbor, right? So in the next couple of years, we will finally have some of the infrastructure that will allow telecommuting to rise.
And you may get more faculty at the research station.
What? I'm sorry?
You may get more, because of that, you get more faculty spending more time at the research station.
Well, that's state funding and state budgets. But I'm thinking you could work for high-tech businesses and telecommuting. Today we have a very small core of that, but it would be interesting if we could get statistics to watch that over the next 5 years. Because that's what's going to show whether or not it's infrastructure holding us back at certain respects.
Yeah.
So we need those statistics.
From the data standpoint, just going back to the shop, unless employers volunteer, we ask employers that have multiple locations to fill out their employment reports for each location. Most of them do, some of them don't. But when those locations start being households in different counties, there may be some employers that do fill out the additional paperwork, but I doubt it. I think that would be really hard to come by, but I agree that would be really great.
I'm going to say one thing and try to get it last quick. Have your community do it. Bellingham does not have a map of the different, I'll just say internet infrastructure, because this utility doesn't want to tell that utility what they've got And so Bellingham's thinking about redevelop or hoping to redevelop its waterfront. There's no plan for exactly this. I mean, but if you can make it known, San Juan offers X, Y, and Z, you might be able to get ahead, because we're going to have a data gap.
Yeah.
And James, you were jumping up and down.
It's messy, but there is a way to get the answer to your question.
He makes stuff up.
As long as you. In our office, Hart does the hard science, and I do that, yeah, we can get that number. So the Census Bureau does the American Community Survey. They do a 6-year rolling sample. So you take really big data swings in it, because remember, it's a statistical sample. So it gets funny. But if you take it with a grain of salt, you can actually look at what they call workshed, homeshed data, and you can actually see where people commute to work. Most of those people will still provide the Census Bureau as a place of work, being an office to which they are connected, not their home. So you'll see that commute pattern, and you see it in really weird places. Camino Island, for 1 year, the largest employer was in the country of Turkey. You see that, and so as long as you take it with a grain of salt, you can kind of get a flavor for that, what it looks like. And because if you looked here and you see how many people go out and the zip codes they're going to, and you see Olympia and you see Seattle, those people aren't driving every day, right? So you start to get a flavor over time what that might look like. Not perfect, but it gives you a flavor.
That's a good answer.
And it's the on-the-map tool with Census, or send us an email.
ACS would actually be
Yeah.
what I would go with.
Yeah,
Now.
I agree. But you pick somebody.
Do you have any data that can tell us how self-employment trends may impact some of the economics of San Juan Island and how they're doing rural versus urban?
From my shop, we don't, but this is where I would tend to triangulate in a little bit, reference the ACS from the census, where they do have, number of self-employed would be factored into that. So I would kind of triangulate between two. Difficulty with the county, its size is with the ACS because of the size of the sample, you're dealing with 5-year averages. So you're not able to get a really good time series with it, but it is possible to kind of combine the numbers that we produce for BLS and kind of add on with a pretty significant margin of error, but be able to estimate how many self-employed there will be as well.
Yes, in the back.
I'm wondering if you have any analysis on the changes in the regulatory environment on utilities and infrastructure, in particular on the market penetration and the differences that has happened since kind of the deregulation of telecommunications and breakup of Mobile, et cetera, and how that has affected and how it correlates to the economic activity in rural places. So my understanding is that the regulatory environment of communications in the 70s was that there had to be a certain capital expenditures even in your lower served areas, and that's gone away. And is that why we're seeing some of this divide of market penetration into the rural areas?
I've seen studies of things like the breakup of the bells, but it's nationally. I haven't seen anything done regionally. Well, I'll have to look. So I got a very unsatisfying answer for you. Short answer is no. But that's a good question. We'll look into that.
Yeah, because it's just interesting when I think you look at some of the statistics on broadband or any other type of penetration into the rural areas seems to be very well correlated with this divergence of economic activity. And that I wondered if anyone else is out there doing that work, doing that analysis.
There was some work that the Kansas City Fed had a Center for Entrepreneurial and Rural Studies. They were doing a little bit of work. That center's gone. Again, it was national. But I'm making a note, looking at James. It would be a good thing to see if some students could work on it, where they can take it. So, good question.
What's the economic difference of people that come out here and work and start new businesses, if you will? Like, say we were able, through the Pathway Initiative, to attract 3 new businesses, right? What's the economic difference between that and 15 people that retire and get a second home here? Because I sometimes wonder, the fact that Seattle is growing as crazily as it is, and it's throwing off as many millionaires as it's throwing off, that's bound to spill over to us. Because we're still going to get our share of millionaires to buy their second home and bring their families up on the weekend. And so as long as they keep growing, we should be getting an expanding share of that pie. How much, so relatively speaking, which drives the economy more? A business that is housed here and has 3 or 4 employees, or retirees who come and build a house and live part-time, that kind of thing?
What I've read, and I'm going to introduce the jargon, a business will create other economic activity, other jobs because of business-to-business activity, and because of induced it'll induce additional activity from the spending of the income, right? So I'm going to break things apart and say, if you start a business or increase the size of the business, you're going to get indirect effects through the business-to-business activity, and you're going to get induced effects through the spending of income, household spending. Whereas the retiree comes in, you only get that induced side. The work that's been done, though, is the economic activity generated by retirees is notable. I mean,
because sometimes I think the best thing we can do is not so much necessarily try to develop small businesses here, but to develop a really quick transportation system that gets them here. Because if you could get retirees that could come out in 2 hours rather than 5 hours, suddenly all those people who are just sick of the traffic on Friday night would come up instead of driving towards us and taking the road. You know what I mean? Well, I'm just not sure.
Well, if you give me a low margin retail business and a very wealthy retiree who spends a lot versus, so it's going to depend on the specifics of the retiree, of course, of the business, but no, I think there's something to be captured.
I just wanted to say that, as our internet system improves, as the traffic in Seattle and Everett continues to grow, that telecommuting is a smart choice, and it does seem like a wonderful marketing strategy. But the way to get telecommuters in their 30s, 40s, or 50s is by telling them how good our schools are here. And people vote most likely, and they want to know, and we do have terrific schools. And we don't have games. And people in perhaps Seattle, Everett, wherever, need to know that.
This talk about economics gets me really swimming in my head, so let me see if I can capture what I want to say. What is I guess the concern I see is there's a disparity issue, and free flow of money from wealthy people who can just free float it, or are they hoarding it? The other part of that is the technology element seems to cause another level of disparity, that we're driving this technology sector so fast that, to me, I think it's sort of an experiment, but essentially it's causing the cost of things to go down. So it's cheaper for me to go buy a new dryer than to hire the local guy to fix my dryer, right? So what kind of impact does that carry? Combine, and then so for me as a middle income earner, I'm caught in this like, well, the guy came, it costs us like $70 an hour, buy his parts, and it ends up costing. I've been through this before. I'll just go get a new dryer, install it myself, and eat the cost. Versus the wealthier class will possibly pay for those services, or are they falling into the same sort of throwaway society that this technology has caused with automated systems? And I work on fire trucks, for instance. The new trucks now, they're all controlled by computers, so it's plug and go. Systems are not breaking. You pull out an old module, put a new module in, reboot it. Oh, good, the system works. There's very few things we fix anymore. This seems to me like the technology is taking away that middle class skilled labor sector, and there's no replacement. There's no that's a lack of jobs, just like the automated waiter or waitress.
Yeah, and it may be worse, because it may be that not only is the new one really no more expensive than getting the old one fixed, but the new one has this new feature, right? So
I guess I pose that question to this group is, because I sense this community is just really, like, there's this whole technology, but we gotta get the fast technology out here. What does that serve in the long run? People sitting at home and doing this? I mean, how does that help our economy?
Can I address that? Because I think, I really agree with what you say, because one of the things, I'm in the remodeling real estate business, and it's really tough sometimes. I've been there for a long time to find a plumber, a sheet metal worker, a good carpenter, a good skilled carpenter. And I think that what you're saying, though, they're expensive, but they can actually make good money if they have that skill set.
Really good money.
But the problem is that skill set is, we're losing it. In my generation, there's a lot of carpenters and plumbers and electricians, but in my kids' generation, there isn't near as many. And in my grandkids' generation, there's zero. Of course, my grandkids are that old yet. But the point is that everybody seems to be going to technology, and we're losing that skill set. We're losing the sheet metal workers and the welders and the plumbers and the electricians and all that. How many here know a 28-year-old plumber, a really good one?
And
They're all 60.
I would not make it an either or. I think we want the technology, but then how do we culturally and otherwise, how do you keep that fabric?
I don't know.
I've got to run catch ferry.
Well, people really want.
Anneliese is going to be here a little longer. Thank you very, very much, Victoria. Thank you.